So it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is Mark Cruth, the Principal Modern Work Coach at Atlassian. Now, I know here in the tech world we are often guilty of making up our own titles, but maybe Mark will share with us what a modern work coach actually does. So Mark brings deep expertise from a career working as a transformational leader and solutions architect, partnering with organizations around the globe to better connect day-to-day work with strategic goals using Atlassian's powerful suite of tools. And when he's not helping teams unlock new levels of collaboration and efficiency, you will find him enjoying epic sci-fi stories, especially those by Brandon Sanderson, or building Lego masterpieces with his kids. I also heard that he is an accomplished voice actor, and maybe, just maybe, he will give us a taste of his patented radio DJ voice. So please join me in giving a super warm welcome to the one and only Mark Cruth.
Thank you for that. Let's see it. Oh, there we go. There's the radio voice. All right, well, thank you, folks, for allowing me to join you here today in Pittsburgh. So I actually love to do exercises, and a lot of today is going to be exercises. You're going to hear me talk, but part of the aspect of being a coach is I don't like to do a lot of the work. I want to make you do the work. So today I want to do one exercise right off the bat. So I need everyone to stand up. Everyone stand up. Stand up. All right. If you are in the back, I need you to come to the front and sit down. See what I'm doing there? Come on up. We're all standing. Find yourself closer to the front because we're going to be doing exercises with each other. I don't want those folks just hanging around. Yeah, come on, join us. You're like, you tricked us, Mark, you tricked us. How dare you? It's that whole high school thing, you're sitting in the back, teacher makes you come up. All right. I appreciate you all that this came up. I work for a company, and it was funny. In the lightning talks, Greg talked about it being like your product is your company. My company is Atlassian, and I like to joke around that sometimes we're the biggest company you've never heard of, because a lot of people know our products. They know, anyone here heard of Jira? Jira, Confluence, Trello, Loom, you name them. At one point in our history, we actually debated renaming ourselves to Jira, which I'm glad we didn't, because everyone knew us then, but we didn't want to fall into that trap of being a one-product company. We've got an amazing set of products that help support collaboration. Oh, you can all sit down now. You're like, when can I sit down? It's funny, the lights are right here, so I kind of could see you all sitting or standing. So for me, I'm going to talk with you today not necessarily about our products. I want to talk with you about our philosophies, because at Atlassian, the goal at Atlassian is to unleash the potential of your team. And the way we do that is, yes, somewhat through our products, but it's really through our ways of working, through our philosophies, how we work at Atlassian. Now, today I want to talk to you about this idea of a modern work manifesto. What do we need to move into the modern age of work? So let's talk a little bit about the future of work. We heard a lot about the future-based aspects in the lightning talks. We've heard a lot about the future just in general. Anyone heard of the term a futurist, like the title? Yeah. I went and looked on Google today, and I got on Indeed, and I came across, right now, in the last 10 days, there's been 10 futurist titled jobs being posted. You could be a futurist at Walmart, I saw. You could also be a futurist at some shipping company in Nashville. But the thing is we're obsessed with this idea, and even more so over the last few years, about being able to predict the future. Be like, where are we going? Especially in the age of AI. Funny thing, my boss is a work futurist. That's his title at Atlassian, and that's why I make fun of him all the time for it. Because for us, and for me, I keep saying, well, do you look like this? Is this you? When I think about a futurist, I think about this. It's like, all right, you're playing with these crazy things. You're predicting the future. The problem is if we look back in time, if we use context and we think about where we've been, we have to ask that question, are we any good at predicting the future? And so there's a couple stories, you've heard these before, but I want to share them because I think they're really good examples about why we can't predict that future. So first off, let's talk about Blockbuster. Love me some Blockbuster. The nostalgia, right? especially now, if you're a millennial or a zennial, you got that nostalgia. Well, you've all heard the story. Reed Hastings, 2002, goes to Blockbuster, tries to sell his company for $50 million, gets laughed out of the room. Blockbuster's like, no way, I don't want, the future is not this internet thing. We're just going through a bubble already. It's like it already blew up. The thing is as Blockbuster continued to grow, because that wasn't their high point yet either. They didn't actually peak until 2009, so they were still on that trajectory. 2009, they had 9,000 stores around just the US, but accessibility to the internet, broadband, all these things started picking up. Plus, as Netflix put it, and Greg's at the end of his talk, they started out in DVDs, but they started looking at, hey, what other possibilities are there? Streaming. And by 2014, Blockbuster was falling behind. They were down from 9,000 stores to 300 stores, and as of today, they're down to 1. Whereas I went and I looked up, if you go to Google, the net value of Netflix today, it's $540 billion with a B dollars. It's amazing to see that Reed Hastings just wanted to sell it for $50 million back in the day, measly $50 million. So for me, Blockbuster, they didn't really understand the future. They predicted it wrong. They just purely predicted it wrong. They thought it would be something different. Let's go to another one. The Nokia E90. Did anyone ever have this phone? Came out in February 2007. You want to know what came out in January 2007? iPhone came out. Thing is this is a superior phone to the iPhone. It really was. The features it had, even the camera on it, it was a fantastic phone. The problem was there was too much. It was too complicated. The iPhone came out, and Apple's whole stance is simplicity, and so people love that. It basically created a neutral playing ground, and so for users, they started adopting the iPhone, and so Nokia decided to turn around and says, all right, we need to listen to our customers. Next year, we come out with a touch screen, simpler phone. But the thing is they'd already missed the wave. At that point, you've got Apple already taking off. You've got Samsung starting to enter the market too. Nokia simply was late. They missed the wave. They just didn't think it was going to be possible yet. And in 2014, of course, they sold off. Nokia, as one of the largest phone providers in the world at that time, sold off their phone division to Microsoft, which of course brought the Windows Phone, which then of course got shuttered a few years later. So again, for me, Nokia just didn't see it. And then finally, you've got groups like Kodak. Kodak's a great one because in 1975, Kodak develops the first digital camera. First camera that doesn't require film. The inventor in their kind of skunkworks area brought it to the board. They're like, look at this. It's going to change the way we do film, the way we do pictures. And the board looks at it and says, hide that, put it away. No one wants to see this. Why would he say that? What do you think? What made Kodak money? Film. That was their business. That was their one big product. It was film. And so no. And of course, years go on, they continue to make developments with these sorts of things, with the digital cameras. But again, their board keeps saying, no, that's not our business. 2007 comes around, and a problem starts happening. Patents start to expire, and all of a sudden now digital cameras start emerging all over the place. Kodak had the future in their hands. They just simply allowed it to slide away because they didn't think that was going to be something that would make them money at the short term. And what's interesting is you look at it at their height, Kodak was worth $40 billion at their height. Today, they're worth $50 million. Again, a shadow of what they used to be. Now, these are all kind of depressing stories. I know it's like, oh man. But what about the positive ones? So one of the things that, I don't know if you were like me, but before the pandemic, I did not like QR codes. I mean, some of you might not like them still. But QR codes were just not something that people used. The technology was there. In 2017, every phone that was being produced had the ability to read a QR code and bring you to a website without an app. Most people don't know that. By 2017, that was the case. But we were just simply not using it. About 30% of phone users actually had clicked on at least one QR code in 2018. Only 30%. Coming in, fast forward to 2020, we all know what happens. We needed something that we couldn't touch anymore, a menu or a brochure. And QR codes came around to the rescue. They saw a 25x increase in usage of QR codes around the world. And the funny thing is, that hasn't changed since the pandemic. It's wavered a little bit, but still right about that 25x. It's now ingrained in terms of how we work. And so for us, this is one of those things where for them, they say, hey, you know what, there's an opportunity out here. And they went out as they brought this out there. But it took change in the world to make it happen. So for me, when I think about these stories, I'm like, man, we suck at predicting the future, right? It's really fun to sit there and think about like, oh, what could, should, would be. And we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be thinking about that. But the thing is, and this is why I call myself what I call myself, this modern work coach, that I could call myself a futurist. But I don't think if I focus on the problems of the future, we'll actually get there. I need to actually solve the problems today. I need to focus on the issues that organizations are going through. And that's what I spend most of my job doing. And so for us at Atlassian, we believe modern work is that. It is focusing on how do we get better today. We think about post-pandemic. We think about return to office. We think about, the advent of AI now. AI isn't a futurist thing anymore. It is a modern thing. How do we work with these things? How do we adapt with them? And so for us, we've been looking at it at Atlassian and says, we need to have a philosophy to live by. Anyone familiar with the Agile Manifesto? I come from the Agile world in my prior days, and the Agile Manifesto set of values and principles written by some software engineers way back in the day. And the whole idea was to give some guiding ideas of where they wanted software to go. And so for us, kind of starting out in the software world, we said, you know what, we need our own kind of manifesto, our thing that says, this is what we want modern work to be. And so for us at Atlassian over the last few years, we've actually developed what we consider is our Modern Work Manifesto. These are going to be 8 different principles that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to get you talking about them too, where we want you to focus on an aspect and how do you get better at it. Now you're going to see 2 variations. You're going to see an idea over another idea. And similar to the Agile Manifesto, the things you see on the screen are both valuable. We just think the thing on the left is going to be more valuable than the thing on the right to you. So focus on. So let's get into these 8. As we go through, I'm going to be getting you pairing up with folks to talk about how they show up in your world. So let's start with that first one. And of course, we're in the age of RTO, so I've got to start with vocation over location. So how many folks are here going back to the office? Imagine most folks have some level of going back to the office, hybrid work, like that. Thing is, I don't want to beat that dead horse. It is what it is. And the thing is the reason why a lot of that happened in my actual opinion is that we focused too much on location back in the day, and we didn't focus enough on vocation. Vocation is how you work. So many organizations, we gave you the tools to go work distributed, but then what happened is we didn't actually figure out how to actually work distributed. We didn't know how to interact with each other. We didn't know how to work asynchronously. And so all of a sudden, we saw a spike in productivity, but then we kind of went back down to like, oh, this feels weird. I don't know how to maintain connection, trust, and communication with my team. And so many organizations said, oh, well, let's go back to what we know, because we only focused in on location. When we think about vocation of a location, we said we need to emphasize the how. One of the things at Atlassian that we've done over the years is we built up what we call our Atlassian Team Playbook. It is a list of 50, I think today it's 59 different practices of how we work. Everything from how we set OKRs, so objectives and key results, to how we actually do async communication, to how we do even things like retrospectives. All these different things are things we do, and we focus so heavily on the how, because we realize that if we don't figure out the how, things like location become the focus, and then for us as a distributed organization, it doesn't work. So for us, focusing on that how is so incredibly important when you're trying to solve how you work today. The next area we've got, outcomes over outputs. Now here's the thing, outputs are good. It's more of that, immediate gratification. It's your Amazon Primes. I love me some Amazon Primes. I got some stuff getting delivered today. It's going to be great. Ordered it last night. So for me, and I'm sure many of you have too, right? So for me, when I think about outputs are critical to be able to get to where we want to go. But the thing is outputs are they're very short-term focused. Outcomes are where we want to go at the end of the day. Amazon, for example, doesn't do Prime to actually make money. They lose money. It's a losing business for them. But their outcome at the end of the day is to become a leader in a particular category to actually be a leader in how much they sell. And they actually see that when they lose money on Prime, they make more of that up and fold by actually selling more products. And so for us, it's focusing on the things that we produce, but it's focusing more on why we're producing those things. It goes back to efficiency and effectiveness. I can get really effective or efficient at producing something, but if it's not effective, if it's not hitting my outcomes, am I just doing more of the wrong stuff? That's our problem. So here's the thing. We've gotten 2 of these values. I want you to actually find a partner. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to discuss. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about these 2 principles. Vocation over location, outcomes over outputs. And I wanted you to think about your context, the world that you're in. Which of these principles do you think is more important in your world? If you had to pick one, they're battling. Which one? Is it vocation? Is it outcomes? Why? And then ultimately, what challenges exist when you try to apply these to your space? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I want you to have a little conversation, then we'll come back together, all right? Find a buddy. Go for it. 3 minutes.
Like
All right, that's been our 3 minutes. Let's bring it back in. Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. I love it. It works with kindergartners and it works with tech professionals, I like to say. All right, so I'd love to hear, just raise of hands, who thought that vocation was more important to focus in on? Vocation? All right, how about outcomes? Outcomes, the other half. All right, so just shout it out. What were some of the challenges that you've seen out there, or you think you'd experience, as you're trying to focus on these sorts of things in your environment? I'd love to hear.
So,
Yeah, go for it.
patient, that's typically what this person asked is grit.
Yeah, it's true. It is. When you think about when you meet somebody, it is something of those things. It's like we're ingrained in it, right? Oh, that's a good one. What else? Yeah, what do we got?
But they said just talking about how.
Yeah.
That's what we're thinking about as well. Figure that the east side of the outport, you just say, you're at high.
It's funny, you're going to see this thread throughout there where they're so tied together. It's exactly it, where all of a sudden you start seeing, you're like, well, if I figure out the how, all of a sudden things like outcomes becomes a whole lot easier because, again, it's so much rooted in those. So you can see my trick of why I do that one first. One more. I think I saw a hand in the back. Yeah.
Billable hours are output, and the billable hours, and there's test doses.
So true. I was a consultant at a small agency at one point, and we were focused very much on like the billable hours that we had. And so we had to be like, well, you have this much of a contract to get this done. And we were trying to build, actually it was one of those, I guess the hybrid mobile apps. Where's my hybrid mobile app guy? Is he still in here? It was one of these, this was years ago, it was like 10 years ago. And I remember we were coming across challenges, and the whole problem was this is a long-time customer of ours. And if I would have just stuck with the billable hours, it would have been something where we ran right through that. And I could have said, well, this is going to cost you a lot more. For us, the outcome at the end of the day was a loyal, long-term customer. And so we stopped, we said, like, no, the goal here is about getting them the solution that we promised them. And that's where there's that balance. All right, so let's keep going. We're going to keep going. We got still 6 more principles to get through. So let's get to the next one. So the next principle we have, this might be, we've got a bunch of consultants in the room, I imagine. This could be a dangerous one. I'm not trying to be mean. It's evolution over transformation. I will say I am a recovering consultant, 5 years clean on it. So I joke around with this, where so often many of these larger organizations go through transformations. Anyone go through a transformation in your organization? Awesome. Go through 2 transformations in your organization. Go through 3 transformations in your organization. You see where I'm going here. Transformations are they're being treated like a project. A transformation is saying like, well, there's this endpoint you get to and it's Valhalla and it's wonderful. The problem is if you're actually doing a transformation, the secret at the end of the day is that there is no end. But the thing is we think it is. It's like going on a 5K. If I signed up for I don't run a lot, but if I signed up for a 5K right now, I bet I could go do it. I'm exhausted at the end of it, but I could do it. If If I do another 5K, I'm like, oh, man. Do another. This is so tiring. The problem is I'm not training for it. I'm not changing my lifestyle for it. I actually just sat down. I was in Stockholm a few weeks ago working with one of our retail customers that we have, big retail customer out there. And they were talking to me about their transformations. They had been on 2 transformations since 2020. Some of the big name consultancies came in. Big transformation plan. Lots of dollar signs, coming in. We paid for this. They showed them for about a month what to do, and then they left. And then all of a sudden, it worked for about a month or 2, and then things changed. And they look at it, and this is, maybe we've adopted some new tools from it, things like that, but has the vocation, has it changed? No. The thing is people aren't tired of transformations, they're just exhausted. Because again, they haven't done the training in between. They haven't figured out the how. And so for us, when we think about evolution, it's about how do you make small incremental change? How do you build up over time? I want to build up the endurance so when I do need to run that 5K, I can just do it. Versus saying, I don't know if I can do that. That's the idea when we think about evolution. We want small incremental change because one little change every day, every week, every month is going to build up to the point where actually you're further along than that transformation ever was. Next one we have is flow over silos. I think one of the biggest things I see as I get on platforms like LinkedIn is still that constant chatter about, oh man, we're in the silo. You got to get out of the silos. And the thing is silos aren't bad. Let me be the first one to tell you, silos are actually good for building up mastery. It's actually really great to have marketing or development or finance in a group because guess what? They learn from each other. But the problem is that learning isn't the same thing as working. Work doesn't happen in that group. Work happens across those groups. It happens across those functions. The problem is when we plan, when we strategize, what do? The CEO comes up with their strategy, goes down to the business leaders, they come up with theirs, they send them out. Now you have marketing has a strategy, development has a strategy, finance has a strategy, they come down. And by the time an individual gets it, they have a goal they're working on that's very finance driven, that's supposed to tie back to this one, but it has no context, no connection to how that counterpart in development or marketing has to do the same work. We're following Conway's law. We're focusing on our organization and we're shipping that in terms of our strategy and our execution. So what we have to do is we figure out how do we focus on the flow work across. And I'm not saying you have to completely decentralize, but what I'm saying is actually think about the groups to the left, to the right of you, not just up and down. How are you working with them? We have a play in our playbook called Network of Teams. It's all about saying, hey, who are those first few connections, those teams that you need to work with to get work done? Focus on them and building a relationship, building goals, focusing on that as a place to start. Because otherwise, you're just going to keep shipping that organization's hierarchy that you have. All right, so I want you to now think about these two. Evolution over transformation, flow over silos. Again, which one of these two are more important to you? And what challenges exist as you go to approach these? So I'm going to give you 3 more minutes. Talk with your partner. Can't wait to hear what you have. Go for it. All right, let's bring it back in. Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. I love it. All right. So when you think about these 2 principles, when you think about evolution and flow, who found evolution to be maybe more important? Anybody? Evolution? How about flow? Raise your hand if you think flow is. All right. About half and half. So tell me, what were some of the challenges that you talked about? What do you think as you approach these 2, whether it be in your organizations or with your customers? Yeah.
So we all had to go home in 2020.
Yeah, we did.
And then we'll have started digital transformation, so the whole thing for a second. And reflecting back on now, it was a moment when you had to transform or not working, not functioning. Some people are very
became very fluid, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So you had to have a transformation there because you're coming in the bump man. So it was also that was a valid design to transform, but then would be all start fault. That itself. Drop all its transformation makes sense. Does pass planning and important for good value to your company, but long term. And they look quite big number. So 3 times.
Well, and I love that you brought it up as that finite moment, because I think you're right. Those are the opportunities, what's the phrase, strike while the iron's hot, That was a moment for true transformations to actually occur. The problem is what we saw in most organizations is they adopted Zoom. They adopted Jira. They brought in the digital tools. It was a digital transformation, but it was tool focused. And I think that was the downfall of most of those. You see some organizations did really well out of it, who came out. I will say Atlassian, we were primarily an office-based organization before the pandemic, and we came out of that. And I remember when I joined 2019, we were 2,000 people. Today we're 14,000, and we're distributed around the world. There's no requirement to go into any offices, but we focus very much on the how during those years as we're building the tools to help support us in the process. Other challenges you all experienced or you might see come up. Yeah. What do you got, Scott?
Well, left-hand side there, so the transformations, when we were asking a question, if you go through multiple at your enterprise or mid-market size company, are you that evolving? And so that it's iterations of transforming that could eventually be, evolving toward wherever we look.
It's true. It's very true. You could be going through those. I will say that you could do the same thing with a 5K, and you don't train at all for a 5K, but if you run a 5K every day, you'll get better. But I don't want to run a 5K and need it every day if I've never run before. I would agree. I think there are aspects of change, but it's thinking about how that organization goes through it. And honestly, in today's age, how do we save money with it too? Because those are expensive. All right, one more. Yeah, what do we got?
I think I'm actually with difficult one, but that by the order.
Heroes.
It's so true. I love that you brought that up, because if you've got the interactions working across the organization, evolution becomes a lot easier at that point because we're all bought in with each other. It's not one versus the other. Fantastic. All right, let's keep going. We got 4 more to go through. The next one is important today because it is so prevalent, and it is this aspect of context over content. I remember back in the day, I started working, it was 2009. I had an email, I had the intranet and my organization. I didn't even have a phone at that time for my company. And that's how I consumed all my information. You know what? Right? It's beautiful. Had Microsoft products that I would just use for Word and things like that. It was great. Fast forward today, if you look today, the average person at an organization consumes information from 11 different products. That is where you get your information from. It could be from Jira, it could be from Salesforce, it could be from Confluence, it could be from SharePoint, it could be from Teams, it could be from OpenAI, it could be any of these things are providing you with data. They're providing you with content. The thing is we got so obsessed with bringing in all the content that we realized we kind of forgot the point that content is not the outcome. The outcome is actually a good decision, a fast decision, the right decision. These are the things we're actually trying to do. And so when we get so obsessed with bringing in all the data and analyzing all the data, we start to lose sight of what it's there for. One of the things we do at Atlassian that's helped us to move away from this is we've actually separated out the way we do project and status reporting. We have our Atlassian home has these project elements that can be tied back to work, but they're designed to be separate in that you go in, you provide an update on the work. Once a week, you provide an update. And we do it, it's like a tweet or an X or whatever they call it nowadays. It's like 260 characters. We say, we want a project update once a week. Let us know if you're on track, if you're having any issues, things like that. And then what we do is we send that information out in a digest, whether it be through Slack if you've got that, or just through email. And then on Monday morning, we go through and we look and say, all right, what are the things we need to focus in on? Where are there issues? Where are things good? The thing is that is us taking what is a bunch of content and trying to focus in on the reason I would need all this stuff is to actually determine who I need to talk to on Monday about help, who needs help. And so for us, we've used that as a mechanism to kind of get rid of some of the noise. So for me, if you find yourself drowning in data, it's really stepping back and be like, well, what am I using this data for? And not to be lost in also in that journey for perfection, not to be focused on, I need the best decision ever. You need the best decision with the data you got right now and move forward with that. And that's what we want you to do. Focus on progress, not perfection. And finally on this one is team over individual. Now for us at Atlassian, we are the teamwork company. Our stock ticker symbol is team. Our whole goal is saying that as an individual, individuals are important. They are the individual pieces that make the machine work. But the team as the machine, it can't work without those pieces coming together, bringing the diverse opinions, experience, thought. But you got to figure out how those people work together. What's the phrase, the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. It really does have to do with how teams work. When we think about this, what it comes down to is figuring out, all right, going back to things like vocation, how do our teams work to get a job done? How do we focus in on getting that work done as a team? And I would even argue one step further today on this, even team isn't even good enough. Most work can't happen in a single team anymore. It involves that cross-team work. But it's focusing on that interaction. How do you build that team atmosphere where people work together? I think we've all been in those environments. I know I have, where I've been in a group of people, not a team, I've been in a group of people. And we know how much stuff we get done on that, or how much stuff we redo in that. In a team, you get the efficiency, you get the effectiveness. So focusing in on those dynamics is critical when information is moving so quickly around you today. So again, let's get into another conversation. I want you to think about these. Team over individual, context over content. What's more important to you? What are the challenges you face? I'm going to give you about another 2.5 minutes, and we'll come back together. Go for it. All right, let's bring it back in. Let's bring it back in. All right, so I would love to hear, just show of hands, who felt that context was more important? Raise your hand. All right, how about team? All right, again, I love it because we're kind of see there's two sides of this coin. We're kind of divided on this one. So what are some of the challenges? I'd love to hear a couple challenges that you talked about as you think about applying these in your world. What we got back here?
I'll suddenly understand a relationship.
Yes. How do you stay up to date, right?
I'm like with time information, also the change like such a thing that actually the open relation.
Yep.
Are working in different contexts that divide.
It's 100%. And one of the things I found that helps to support those sorts of things is getting really clear of how we work as a team. It's like how do we work together to gather this information, but then also determining how do we make decisions? What level do I need to get information from someone else versus our team can make that with the data that we have? It's getting really clear and crisp on that kind of stuff. Great call out. Yeah, what do we got? Oh.
Other than that, so what do you do with teams? When you have a team made up of what? You can 6 bots.
It's interesting because I would argue that it's still not fully a team. Like I think that, bots are there, and we even talk about it at Atlassian. To me, I think bots are kind of like an intern. An intern is someone who's going to help you. They may not have all the context. They may not have everything, but they're damn good at getting stuff done for you, right? And the thing is as an individual working with these bots, they're only going to be as good as you make them at that point. And the problem is, if you can only make them so good, you don't benefit from the value of being on a team. The whole idea of a team is I have people who are better than me at other things who can actually help up my game. So that would be my feedback on that one. All right, one last one, and then we're going to keep going.
When we discuss that team over repetition, another person level just the team is what the team looks like would be a controlling system self-led looking out for each other. So that's like the reaction that principle. And we match it basketball where every opposition is a sign of specialization and responsibility to the ball not forward round that you don't see the Euro game America.
I love that analogy because at the end of the day, it's not that the center did their job really well. That's not the outcome you're going for. You're looking to win the game, and you're looking to make sure that ball is moving around. Girl, I love that. All right, let's keep going. We got about 10 minutes left, so I've got 2 more for you. All right, next one we have, and this is especially today is important, better over bigger. So two numbers, 500,000, that's a number. That is roughly how many jobs have been impacted by tech layoffs over the last 3 years. It's a really big number. It's a scary number. Here's another number, 400,000. That's the number of jobs that were added into tech between February of 2020 and February of 2022. I find those numbers fascinating because Many folks in the tech industry, when we went and had this kind of digital revolution, this transformation, we went and just hired. And there's articles out there. I mean, stupid hiring. Like, I'm hiring this person, not that I have a job for them, but I don't want someone else to have them. That was literally how people were hiring. They're focusing on getting bigger. I'll even say it at Atlassian, we struggled with this. We set out a goal of like, we're gonna be this 25,000 person company. 4 months later, we announced our first round of layoffs when the world started turning around. Now at Atlassian, we've done really good. We had one round of layoffs. It was very strategic, but we got humbled by that, and I think many organizations have. We focus in on this size. We think that's how we make it happen. The thing is size doesn't mean quality. Size doesn't mean, I would take an organization of 1,500 people with people who are incredibly passionate about their jobs because they haven't been impacted by layoffs, they've been very strategic about their size, versus an organization of 20,000 people who laid off 50% of their organization because they grew too big. Because guess what? Passion is going to be not present in that organization. You can see the difference there. So it goes back to things like that effectiveness at the end of the day. And that's why when I think about better over bigger, it is about focusing on that outcome at the end of the day. And then finally, adaptability over adherence. I think rules are good. Rules make games fun. If you play golf would be kind of lame if you didn't have any rules in it, right? You just take the ball and drop it in the cup. Hole one, right? No rules. The thing is you need those to provide guardrails for you. But the thing is you also need to know when to break the rules when you're in the middle of a situation. One of the interesting things that Atlassian just recently did is we recently became the title sponsor of an F1 racing team, Williams. Anyone here F1 fans? There you go. So Melbourne, the Grand Prix in Melbourne happened a few weeks ago. Alex A, that's all I remember. There you go. He, see, someone was gonna know it, I know. Him and his partner from Williams, they're racing. His partner, they washed out because they had rain and it was just, people were spinning out. They lost about a quarter of the contestants from that. And so his teammate and the pit crew got on the phone with him, on the radio with him, and says, hey, you need to pit stop now. He says, I don't need to pit stop now. Based on how we've run this before, I don't pit for like another 2 laps. And he says, no, you need to pit stop now because we think that there's variables, there's changes in our environment. So he did. He trusted his team, he did it. And he attributes that to the fact of why he got 5th place, which was more than he ever expected to get. He was expecting like 8th or 9th. But he was able to, because he took that pit, he says that was the reason why I was able to then overtake when things got a little bit crazy. They broke their agreed on initial rules. So for me, that's where adaptability comes in. It's that ability to think, all right, when should I change? And if I can change, all right, is it a good idea? Can I do it? What will the outcome be? All right, so one more conversation. I'll give you about a minute on this one so we can wrap things up. Because I want you to think about better over bigger, adaptability over adherence. What's more important? What are some of the challenges? I'll give you about a minute, then we'll come back together. Go for it. All right, let's bring it back in one more time. Let's bring it back in. All right, so I would love to hear from you all. I'd love to hear, as you've been talking about the challenges and which ones are more important, who here, raise of hands, had better as what they think is more important? All right, how about adaptability? There you go. What were some of the challenges you chatted about? And I only gave you a little bit of time, but I'd love to hear. Yeah, we got a hand in the back?
For adaptability of our parents, kind of reminding us of the acceleration, evolution, and first this
Transformation.
At parents is like the bureaucratic, and of course, even just saying it's like I'm adhering to this, whereas adaptability is the organic, evolution. They're just making those changes because you in the state of the U.S. something that pivoting itself to you.
I love that. Exactly. It's not doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. It's like, hey, I learned from this. I should maybe adjust this a little bit. What's one more? What we got? What's one more challenge that you chatted about? Yeah, in the back.
So, our organizations, quality and customer care, customer service as a force of their business model. Yet we feel that market share sometimes overrides that policy. So they're making decisions
that they'll contribute to the quality of the customer
Yep.
in the airline experience. So I think there's a challenge there because you may be saying that better and greater quality, greater customer relationship and are important, and yet you've got the numbers to sit in.
Yeah. And it goes back into that balance, and I think that's where it's the hard moments that determine what you espouse to be and what you actually enact as an organization.
In fact, the fear, so I mean, we're talking about time sensible
Oh, yeah.
and why is important.
Yep.
Didn't focus and center and anchor on why. So many other questions.
It all gets connected. And I think as we kind of go back and look at where we've been, I think that's a great tie-in here, because at the end of the day, these are all interlaced together. You can focus in on being better, but if you do that at the sacrifice of the team, are you actually better? And so for us, it's thinking about how do these interact with each other? How do these balance off of each other? For us, these are things that we're not necessarily always good at, but it's things that how do we keep these as guiding lights for us as we're moving forward, making sure these are things that as we move forward, we're like, all right, am I doing this in this respect? Am I focusing on how I work versus just always talking about the where, things like that. So just a couple final questions for you before we end today. And we've gone through all of these. And so what I'd love to hear from you is I have 2 questions, and you just shout them out. So when you think about these 8, and you think about your organization, just think about these for a second. Which one of these do you think is a superpower for your organization? Like when I talked about these or when you chatted, you were like, you lit up. You're like, oh, we are so good at that. Any of these out there, feel free to shout them out. What's something that your organization is really good at? What do you think? Are we not good at any of them? Adaptability. I love that. Adaptability. What else? Team. Feel that team culture?
That word.
Evolution. Feeling that constant change and making sure, again, goes back to some of that adaptability. Maybe it's an easier question. Which ones of these are your kryptonites? Which are the ones when you talked about it and you're like, oh my Lord, cringed a little? Safe place, right? Safe place. Any of these resonated with you when you talked about it and you're like, I wish we did better here? Context.
What?
Flow. Outcomes. These are all things. Now, my challenge to you as we leave today is going to be how do you, we actually already moved, never mind. Is how do you turn that kryptonite into your superpower? Focusing on how you change. And if you want that view of the Modern Work Manifesto, that QR code, we'll get it for you. We'll make sure that's available too. But for me, it's really thinking about, and it's almost that adaptability, that evolution over transformation. What would be those things you would need to change to start making that happen? So, as we wrap this up, I always like to think, and I always like to remind us that, we've got things like the tools out there. We've all got tools. Like I mentioned, we got at least 11 tools we're all likely using to get stuff. We also have practices. We have things like the manifesto. We have the techniques, the ways of working. And if we bring these things together, we really can bring change to the way we work in the modern age. And for me, it's continuing trying to adapt with that. And so I want you to remember one last thing as we wrap this up, and that is dysfunction is the gap between what you know and what you apply. Hopefully, through the last 2 days of this conference, you've had the opportunity to learn some new things, pick up some ideas. I'm hoping today out of this session, maybe one of these areas sparked an idea for you to be like, oh, we really should focus more on flow or outcomes. But if you go back to work tomorrow or Monday and you just go back to the normal thing, you don't change anything. This was just a great time to socialize. It wasn't a growth opportunity. So turn it into a growth opportunity by making those small changes. And with that said, folks, thank you so much for your engagement and your time. We'll make sure that manifesto is available for you. Spread it out there. For us, it's how we work. And then feel free to always connect with me on LinkedIn. I call myself a coach because I'm there for the people I talk with. Always feel free to reference me. So I'll pass it on to whoever's next. There we go. Thank you, everybody.